You know what sucks? Being poor. You know what else sucks? Having to listen to your rich classmates talk about how much they suck. Join us today as we look at 4 things that would make life really boring if you were alive during the Victorian era. Number 4. If you wanted to be entertained, you had to be wealthy. For the poor, there was little to do but work. The typical workday for most people lasted around 12 hours. And although this sounds like it should have left plenty of time for other activities, there was no such thing as a day off. Factories ran 7 days a week, with only a 1-hour break for lunch. If you were employed in a shop, restaurant or hotel, you could expect to work 14-hour days, 7 days a week, with half an hour off for dinner. Meals were often eaten at your desk, and if you were unlucky enough to work in a coal mine or as a domestic servant, you might work 16 hours a day or more. The only way to get time off was to get sick. But since many illnesses were caused by working conditions, this came with the risk of dying. With so little time left over for leisure after work, the poor didn't really have any opportunity to take up hobbies or participate in entertainment, and those that did somehow manage to find the time were still unlikely to enjoy their free time, as it was usually spent looking for food or trying to earn just a bit more money. But don't feel too bad for the poor. At least they weren't stuck in school. For the lucky few who had enough money not to have to work long hours, their days weren't exactly filled with fun either. After all, they were forced to spend a lot of their time studying, so they could get well-paying jobs. To put it into perspective, when we say that schools were stricter back then, this is how strict they were. When students misbehaved, teachers were allowed to use whatever means necessary to punish them. This meant hitting students with canes, rulers, or even the infamous birch rod, which looked like this. If you were really bad, you might find yourself locked in a room alone for hours or even days. Imagine being sent to the principal's office and then finding out he wants to lock you in a room with no food or water for days. Oh wait, it actually happened. It was called solitary confinement and was used for various reasons, including punishment, but also to force students to study. If you were a girl, you might find yourself locked in your bedroom for weeks at a time. Your parents would do this to keep you from playing outside or going out with friends because, well, you were a girl and that was your role in society. If you were a boy, you would be sent away to a boarding school where you could learn discipline through hard work and avoid the temptations of the outside world. We're sorry for putting this next one so low on the list. We just couldn't bring ourselves to admit this next thing until we were sure the drill was really over. No. 3. Public transportation sucked. Invented in 1807, the London-based postal van system was the first motorized form of public transportation. While we can be grateful that it wasn't horse-powered, the reality of riding in these vans was far from comfortable. There were no seat cushions, no suspension system, and little protection from the elements. So if it rained, you'd get wet. If it snowed, you'd get cold, and if it was hot, well, you'd get sweaty. As the mail coaches traveled at the speed of a walking horse, the ride was extremely bumpy. So if you were planning on reading while traveling, you'd probably end up with a concussion. Speaking of travel, if you decided to visit your friends across town, you wouldn't be able to take the bus with them, since buses didn't exist. The only other option would be to walk. That is, unless you were rich enough to own a horse. Since most people couldn't afford a personal horse, they would have to share one with others who lived nearby. But there was always the chance that the horse would bolt and run away, leaving you stranded and exhausted on the side of the road. And if you thought this situation couldn't get any worse, we lied because it totally could. If you were unlucky enough to be traveling at night, you had to worry about horse thieves. And now for the number 2, we will be talking about the streets. But before we do that, please take a moment to subscribe. It's free and helps us make more videos. And now back to the streets. Imagine living in the city. Now imagine that every street was unpaved, full of trash and human and animal waste. Well, welcome to Victorian England. During the Industrial Revolution, cities became overcrowded and unsanitary. While the countryside saw its population decrease, more and more people moved into cities to find jobs. This rapid urbanization overwhelmed housing and sanitation systems. The result was slums, with streets so dirty that they became open sewers. They were so filthy that the ground was almost entirely covered with a thick layer of trash, mud, and waste. Walking down the street was like navigating a minefield. Not only did you have to worry about stepping in something bad, but the garbage often concealed broken glass, bricks, and other sharp objects that could cut or bruise your feet. And with no proper lighting system, you couldn't see where you were going, making it easy to trip or fall into an open sewer and drown. But if you managed to stay upright and dry, you still had to deal with the stench. The smell of rotting garbage mixed with sewage made the air almost unbearable at times. People tried their best to avoid spending too much time outside, which was nearly impossible. And no. 1. It was dangerous outside. Besides dodging piles of trash and sewage, you had to watch out for actual trash. Poor children would rummage through the garbage to try and find items they could sell or use. Sometimes they would come across something valuable, but most of the time, it was just old and broken. It wasn't unusual for people to be attacked or robbed while walking home at night. Luckily, the police force was created in 1856 to protect the citizens from crime. The problem was that police officers were severely underpaid and often had to resort to petty corruption to make ends meet. This led to bribery, kickbacks, and little effort being put into catching criminals. Citizens took matters into their own hands and formed neighborhood watch groups. But if this didn't scare off criminals, they would turn to hiring an agency that specialized in catching thieves. These agencies were expensive, costing around 10 shillings a month, which was more than the average factory worker earned in a week. As you can see, life during the Victorian era wasn't exactly a piece of cake, especially if you weren't wealthy. But at least it gave us some great TV shows. Let us know in the comments below if you think you could survive a day in Victorian England. And while you're at it, why not stick around and check out our other videos?